Welcome. Well, you are at home with Jim and Joy, and you are an important part of our EWTN family. And we're so delighted that you've welcomed us into your home. We would love to hear from you. So send us an email with a question or a comment to jimandjoy@ewtn.com. Well, today I'm very excited about our guest. Her name is Kathryn Rombs, and she is the founder and president of Mighty Is Her Call Incorporated. You could go to this fabulous website. It's called ytsync-en.com. And today we're going to have a fabulous conversation with her all the way from Frascati, Italy. And we're excited about that.
It is.
It's going to be wonderful.
And today's the feast day of St. Mary Magdalene. And what a beautiful feast day this is. What a marvelous work our Lord did in her life. And it really fits with the theme of the day, Mighty is Her Call.
Yes.
Because Kathryn is sharing about the call of being a woman, the call of being feminine, the call of being a mother, if God grants biological a child. That this is a mighty thing, a wonderful thing. And I really think of Our Lady, Mary. The Lord has done great things for me. Holy is his name, she says, the Magnificat. And think about Mary Magdalene. We know that she was one of the women that accompanied Jesus Christ along the way. It mentions Joanna as well. Some women that he had delivered of evil spirits. I believe it says that she was delivered from 7 spirits. Who knows what her lifestyle was like? Some say that she was a prostitute. Was she identified with the sinful woman? Is she the sinful woman? We can go around and around about those things. But the fact that Jesus touched in such a holy way so many women and affirmed their sacredness and their dignity and delivered them from sin and from evil spirits and whatever was going on in their lives and gave to them their true essence.
Yes.
He affirmed the essence of their being as women. Mighty is that call, simply to be what you are, right?
Right.
It said, there's nothing better we can give to God than to become who we are. And the problem is, we're not who we are.
Right.
Baptism should bring us to that, but then we have to live that out. So whether it's a man, it's a woman, we have to become who we are. And somehow, some way, Jesus, and I think Our Lady Mary, when women come in contact with him, they live what they're supposed to live. They live at their address. What's my address? Woman, married, mother, and you live there. You're at peace. You're filled with joy. Mighty is this call.
Yeah, and I love that, Jesus and his connection and how he met with Mary Magdalene and how he gave her her true, authentic self and let her know that she was made for more, that her way of living and her way of loving and her way of being, it wasn't from God, and that she was made for more than what she was doing and being with her life. And we, on a daily basis, we run a pregnancy medical center in downtown Birmingham, and we have the privilege of encountering woman after woman who has believed the lie that this world has told, that you are just a sexual object in this sexually saturated culture. And so they're out there with many sexual partners, having babies out of wedlock, being used, being broken, choosing abortion. And we get on a daily basis to have them come in and repair and restore the dignity, value, and worth of a woman. And Mighty is our call back to that place.
Kathryn Rombs is up next. Don't go away. It's going to be a fantastic show. MightyIsHerCall.com. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Well, you are at home with Jim and Joy, and today our guest is Kathryn Rombs, and she is the founder and president of Mighty Is Her Call Incorporated. You could go to the great website. It's called ytsync-en.com, and we're going to find out a little bit about Kathryn. We're having this wonderful interview all the way from Frascati, Italy, and so we're going to find out a little bit about Kathryn, and then she's going to tell us on Friday's show more and more about the ministry and all that she's doing to restore the culture and the dignity and value and worth of every woman, especially in her call as a mother. So, Kathryn, we welcome you to At Home, and we're so delighted to have you. But first, we want to tell you, tell our family, what was it like growing up in the 1980s in Manhattan? You had a family friend that was Gloria Steinem, and your goal was to be a powerful woman. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
That's right, Joy. I was, my mom and sister and I moved to Manhattan when I was in second grade. And so from second grade through 12th grade, I was raised on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And I was really raised to be a powerful young woman and to live out a mighty vocation. I was raised to use my voice and be a powerful influence for the good in the world. My mom is a beautiful woman. She's a feminist and a Christian, and she is personal friends with Gloria Steinem, and they worked together on many projects as I was growing up. I remember one time Gloria had some feminists and their daughters to her apartment in New York City, and Gloria, gave us a talk, and the theme of the talk was passing the baton. And she said to the young women in the room, do not lose and for what we've gained for you. Do not let go of the successes that we have achieved for you. We need you to step up and take the baton and carry it forward. And so I really was given very direct messages all growing up that it would be on me to help the culture advance in terms of feminism. And in many ways, I appreciate this. I appreciated it then, and I still appreciate it because there have been so many injustices against women over the millennia. And so, of course, in God's eyes, it is correct to right those wrongs and to reestablish justice. Jesus himself was so honoring of the women in his time and really shocked those around him in the ways that he innovatively related to them. And so I appreciate that. And John Paul II is one of my favorites. And he has so many times claimed something right about the feminist movement in restoring the wrongs of prejudice against women.
So we have the early feminist leaders who stood so strongly for the right to vote, to other issues that were injustices and righting wrongs. I believe most of those early feminists would be aghast to think of contraception, never mind abortion. When we speak of Gloria Steinem, correct me if I'm wrong, but she was the kind of like one of the foundresses of modern feminism, which kind of went against the early feminists and their view of sexuality and being a homemaker and so on. And so it became like the autonomous woman with Gloria Steinem and others. Who was it, Friedan, the feminine mystique. So you're under the influence, of part of feminism that's good with Gloria Steinem, equal work, equal pay, and so on. But then you've got this whole other thing of distortion of sexuality. I think distortion of what it means to be truly feminine. Ms. Magazine, I think she founded, which I've never gone through it myself. I actually put it in before the show, and it came up with a list of pornographic, kind of magazines. I don't know if it is or not, but I didn't even click that because I didn't want that on my thing, looking at pornographic magazines. So, I mean, this was her philosophy, ideology. She's still with us. and may every good thing take place in her life before her passing. But so were you being formed in this way of thinking, a more radical form of feminism, as well as righting wrongs, a kind of a redefining, a re-imaging of what it means to be feminine?
That's a really good question because my mother is a historian and is a published author, and her interest is in faith and feminism. And she really wanted to reclaim
Wow.
the original feminists that you were referencing. And so, yes, my mother was very much and passionate throughout my upbringing about faith not being opposed to feminism, and the two can go hand in hand. The environment of New York City in which I grew up was more of the second wave
Yeah.
of feminism,
Yeah.
marked by Gloria. And so I did receive many messages, but not from my own home, but just from the environment that I was raised in general, that yes, I mean, most young women in New York City, on the Upper East Side were on the pill. So motherhood and young women were off to a bad start from the very beginning because it was every girl's nightmare that she would get pregnant,
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it was interesting to me to be raised in a situation where I was encouraged to be strong and powerful, but no one ever said to me, and did you know that motherhood is one of those options? Do you realize how much motherhood influences the culture?
Right.
Mothers, as John Paul II said, are the gateway to the future of humanity. We are sort of the gatekeepers of the future of the human race. It's a powerful, mighty calling. It's interesting that in the whole gamut of what women could do that are the things that are powerful, motherhood wasn't
No.
really considered one of those
Right.
options. I feel like, to your point about contraception and so forth, it was as though I can understand it, that for Gloria and Betty Friedan and Bella Abzug, the idea was we finally have the chance to make it to the top of our various ladders. So why have a baby right now? Like, why not put that off for a while so that you can not be distracted or held back from achieving the fullness that you can achieve? And I will say that I did take in that message.
Yeah.
I really did have a desire for greatness, for achievement, to do something worthy with my life. And I really did have the sense that motherhood would hold me back.
Yes.
So tell us about your Christian journey and your journey to Catholicism.
Okay. Well, I became a Christian when I was a teenager. I went to my grandmother's church in Dallas, Texas during the summers throughout high school and participated in their youth group. And the love and the joy and the sort of otherworldly happiness that I saw in the lives of those teenagers really impacted me because my world of people in New York, they really weren't very happy. They were maybe going to excel, but not on the happiness front. And so I was really touched to see the joy of these young people. And it was clear to me that their joy came from Christ and their personal encounter with him and their personal relationship with him. So I became a Christian and was not really sure how that would interface with my other sort of cultural beliefs. But it was a slow process of thinking these things through. I went to college and studied philosophy. I started studying the philosophy of religion because I wanted to maybe be a minister or something of that kind. And I thought, well, philosophy of religion sounds good. But I quickly turned into just a complete focus on philosophy because that seemed to be the place where I would be able to sort out so many of my questions. And I then went on to get a doctorate in philosophy, and I became Catholic during that time. Really, one of the reasons that I became Catholic was just the authority question, sola scriptura. I really saw challenges to that. And so I really saw the Catholic Church as, I guess I would say, more intellectually honest than the community of faith that I had previously belonged to. And yet, I also had something of a spiritual conversion in my heart. I went on a retreat first to Gethsemane, which is where Thomas Merton was, if you know that Trappist monastery in Kentucky. And it's funny because it was the Baptist Student Union that took a trip to a Catholic monastery. And I had never seen anything like it before. I had never seen the Liturgy of the Hours. I had never heard them sung. I had never been in the environment of this sort of Lectio Divina, contemplative prayer. And I had a complete about face in my life. When I saw that, my spirit just opened up and I felt really at home for the first time. I thought, this is the way I am meant to pray. This is the way that I am meant to love God. So it took a while for me to actually become Catholic because I set about to read every single church council ever written and all the documents of the church councils and every apologetics book ever written. So that's an exaggeration, but it took me a lot of time to think through it. But I did finally, I was received into the Catholic Church when I was about 24 years old. And I stood alone, I was there just having thought through it myself and not with, many friends or family or anything. It was really a very personal decision.
So beautiful.
We have about a minute left, and I'm just wondering, in the midst of that journey and coming into Catholicism, where were the moral issues, ethical issues, sexuality issues? Were they difficult for you to deal with, or you just came in lock, stock, and barrel when you came in? Because usually dealing with that sexuality issue is the final kind of step. We just have a minute, wondering about your journey.
No, I loved the church's teachings about sexuality. I felt like basically the New York City lifestyle in the 80s was it just eats at people's hearts and souls. Like it just was so violent. And there's something so beautiful and restorative about talking about the dignity of sexuality. I'd never even heard of something so wonderful. So it was a draw for me.
Well, Kathryn, thank you so much for sharing with us on the Feast of St. Mary Magdalene. There's plenty more to come. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Well, today we're visiting with Kathryn Rombs, who is the founder and president of Mighty Is Her Call. You could go to the great website. It's mightyishercall.com. Well, Kathryn, we so enjoyed hearing your story, but now we want you to tell our family at home, when did you get married, and tell us about motherhood.
Okay. Well, I was discerning becoming a nun actually when I was in graduate school because I wanted to give my life in a really radical way to God. I love the Catholic Church and I just fallen in love with Catholicism. One of the main things that I love so much about it is that it seemed to me that Catholics have this ingenious way of giving their life to God. For example, Saint Anthony, just went out into the desert, gave up everything he had, a comfortable, cushy life in Alexandria, and went out into the desert to find Jesus because he found in poverty and silence Christ. Well, St. Clare and Francis of Assisi, they shaved their heads, they wore sackcloth, tunics. They found Jesus in his poverty and in his radical gift of self. There's so many ways that Catholics have found these luminaries, as Benedict the 16th calls them, that they find these extraordinary ways of just being sort of wild in how they give their life to God. And I wanted to do that. I thought, I just want to give everything to God. And I guess I assumed that I had to be religious to do that. My basic assumption, when you read these stories, they all happen to be nuns or monks or priests, popes. So I was like, well, you got to be a nun if you're a woman and you're going to give your life in one of these radical ways to God. And so then I fell madly in love with a really cute guy in the theology department. I was in philosophy and he was in theology, and the hallways were a parallel, and we had some joint classes together. Actually, my husband was an acolyte, an altar server at the mass in which I was received into full communion with the Catholic Church, but we didn't know each other well at that time. But I got to know him. He was super cute. He rode a motorcycle, looked like James Dean, and was totally infatuated with the early church. And all he could talk about was, St. Augustine and the early church fathers. And I just thought, oh, this guy is so beautiful. And then we went on our first date, and he said, well, what are you interested in doing with your life? Are you going to be a professor of philosophy? And I said, well, I'm thinking about becoming a nun. A little pushy thing to say on a first date, And he replied, oh, that's fascinating, because I was going to become a monk, but I've discerned that I'm not going to do that. And I said, well, why did you change? How do you know that you're not going to become a monk? And he said, well, because instead I discerned that I have a vocation to family. Wow, that sentence just was like thunder. I could not. At first, I was like, "Is that a pickup line? Like, what a line, But then I realized, like, from his face, it was not a joke. It wasn't a line, and it was really a thing for him. That it's as radical for him to choose family life as it would have been to be a monk in a desert.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, ooh. And so this began my journey of understanding and searching out the mystery of the powerful vocation in family life. And for me, being a wife and a mother.
Yes.
Well, we just have about a minute and a half left before the conclusion of our time with you. So just briefly, what is so radical about being a wife, about being a mother? How do you give your life away in such a vocation that you can compare it to the saints that have given up everything, and nuns and sisters? What's so radical about it?
Well, in my view, there's only one way to become fully human, which is to find a way to make a sincere gift of self. And of course, this is stated in Gaudium et Spes and repeated many, many times by John Paul II and subsequent writers and popes. And this sincere gift of self is what I see as being so radical, but whether it's Clare of Assisi or Anthony in the desert, they're finding this radical way to give themselves. And to me, open to life motherhood is the best kept secret of the Catholic Church. It is this opportunity to give yourself so fully to God by way of motherhood, by opening yourself to God's plan for your life.
So, Kathryn, thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to unpacking this more fully on the Friday show. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, all of you, for being with us. You're an important part of this family. You're always at home with Jim and with Joy. Keep it on EWTN. Bye now.